Hey everybody, this video is how to become a non-smoker without gaining weight, without getting irritable, without failing, without substituting another addiction. And I'm talking about getting through everything that makes you want to smoke a cigarette. With your morning coffee, after a good meal, out drinking with your friends, after some fun with the husband or the boyfriend or the girlfriend, whatever. But these are all like, ooh, after something, it's like, ooh, let's light up. Okay, I got through all of that. No weight gain, no irritability, no moodiness, and no swapping out for another addiction. And here's what happened. I had tried plenty of times to stop smoking, only I wasn't calling it that. I was saying, I'm trying to quit. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm in the process of quitting smoking, okay? That word is like a downfall. That's the worst word that you can say, because your brain and you're addicted to the tar and the nicotine in the cigarettes. So is your brain, okay? And that hand to mouth thing, puffing on a cigarette, that's where people get into a jam when they try to quit smoking and they end up eating everything because of the hand to mouth thing. No, this is foolproof. This July 2025 will be 22 years since I took the last puff of the cigarette. When I took that puff, it felt like I was sucking on the burning ember of a charcoal briquette, and I was like, I'm cured. And that was it. And I still had cigarettes left. I kept them in my glove box, and I passed them out to homeless people. I'd roll down my window, and I'm like, do you smoke? And they were like, yeah. And I said, you want some cigarettes? And they'd say, yeah. And of course, funny, I said, do you guys need a light? Oh, no. And they'd have like those good lighters, hurricane-proof lighters, okay? It worked. Now, I gave myself a 2-year goal because that's how long it took me to become a total full-fledged smoker with my own brand, my own lighter, cigarette case, the whole works. And that all started when I was 15, and I got hooked up with older, cooler kids. And again, that first puff was like sucking a barbecue ember. Ugh! Gagging, puking, snot, tears. It was disgusting. But over the course of 2 years, trial and error, and getting through that, I became a smoker. So fast forward a few years, and I've got kids, and I'm married to a smoker. And there were times that I tried to quit smoking. I tried to quit cold turkey, gained 30 pounds. And I was so miserable and irritable. I remember coming home one day and my kids were holding a cigarette and a lighter. Just smoke, Mom, just smoke. That's how bad that addiction is. That when you're not smoking and you're trying to just quit cold turkey, you become a whole different person. I tried the nicotine gum. I tried the nicotine patch. I didn't try acupuncture because, no. I tried these pills from the health food store. Nothing worked. And I even had a physical one time, and the doctor says, oh, your lungs sound pretty good. You're not a smoker, are you? And I'm like, actually, I am a smoker. And that kind of was like the worst thing, because I thought, yay, I can just get away with this. Well, I'm getting ready for work one day, and I got the makeup mirror and my makeup lights, and I go to take a puff of my cigarette, listening to the music. Oh, I think I'm so fine. And I saw these tiny lines on my lips, and I was like, ooh, what is that? Well, that's what happens when you pucker up and take puffs. And then I started thinking about these old ladies that I used to see smoking, and their hands, their fingertips were yellow from the nicotine, but their lipstick was like smeared, or it was sucked up into those lines. So I said, oh, when I saw those lines, whatever your motivation is to become a non-smoker, mine was vanity at that moment. And so I just called out to God, help me, tried everything, nothing's worked. And I dreamt about my first cigarette. I dreamt about the process. And I woke up and I was like, that's it. I'm going to wean myself off of cigarettes the same way that I weaned myself onto them. And so I said, well, let me see how many cigarettes I smoke. So the first cigarette I smoked that day, I looked at the clock. I'm thinking it's 9:30 in the morning. And I wrote the number 1 and I circled it. That was my first cigarette. So, I smoked it like normal. and that was it. At the end of the day, I had actually only smoked 7 cigarettes, but I always thought I smoked a half a pack a day, which meant I was actually lighting 3 cigarettes that I walked away from. And how many of us have done that? You light a cigarette, you put it in the ashtray, and you go do something, you come back and it's burned up and gone. So you light another one. But that one you burned up, that still is money that you just let go to ash. So when I saw that I only smoked 7 cigarettes, I was like, oh. Then I started seeing the financial. I said, oh, well, that means a pack would actually last me 3 days almost, because there's 20 cigarettes in a pack. So 7 cigarettes a day, by the 3rd day, you need to buy a pack of cigarettes, not every other. So that was kind of cool. And then Oprah did a show about heroin addicts going to the methadone clinic to get like a little help to ease the withdrawals. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's when I said, I'm going to wean myself off of cigarettes. And I made a conscious decision to not say quit. Because when you say quit, your brain's like, well, what are we going to replace it with? Because you can't just quit us. And that's a failing word, quit. Because there's an ironic thought process that overtakes us when we're told, don't you go out with that girl, don't you go out with that boy, don't you wear that dress, don't you eat that food. When you tell somebody not to do something, they're going to do it. They can't help it. They have to do it. They have to prove you wrong. And if you say, don't you dare go out with that girl, she's going to be your daughter-in-law and the mother of your grandchildren. Same as if you try to tell your child, don't you marry that boy. Oh, I'm going to marry him and I'm going to have his babies. Bam, there's your son-in-law, the one you didn't want. So instead of saying quit, I kept saying, I am becoming a non-smoker. So the first day I figured out I only smoked 7 cigarettes. And Oprah did that show on weaning and the methadone clinic. So I said, I'm going to do this. This is going to work. I'm going to make it work. This was my last opportunity, my last chance to try and overcome this. And so that's how that started. And the first week, I smoked like I always smoked, but I wrote down. I'm going to show you this little day planner I used. I mean, I did 22 years ago. It was all about, old school stuff. I mean, you all can figure out, but you need to keep track. Let me show you my little thing. So this is like this year, January 2025. But when I started, like, I wrote number 1, 9:30 a.m. And that was it. And then the next cigarette I had, I wrote down number 2 and whatever time it was, say 11:45, okay? And that's how I did. Well then I said, okay. And I was lucky enough to be married to a non-smoker. So then I said, okay, I'm not going to smoke in the house anymore. So downstairs goes the cigarettes, the lighter, and my little day planner. So anytime I wanted a cigarette, I had to go downstairs in the garage with the garage door open. Well then, after a week of doing that, I said, I'm going to smoke outside the garage. And most restaurants and businesses, you're not supposed to smoke within 25 feet of that door. And a lot of those employees are standing right outside the front door smoking. And you can smell that smoke when you walk in. That's rude. So I started smoking away from the house, like out further in the backyard. But I never said I was quitting, and I never said I couldn't have a cigarette. I just had to write it down and what time I was smoking it, what time it was when I lit it. And here's what's funny. I would be doing something in the house, in the kitchen, whatever, and I'd want a cigarette, and I'd think, well, okay, let me finish this. And I'd finish it, and I'd go down, and I'd have a cigarette. But then that's boring, okay? I'm sitting there smoking a cigarette, and I start thinking about all the stuff I have to do. But I also said, you cannot put your cigarette out and relight it. It has to be a brand new cigarette every time. Make it count. So if I couldn't finish that cigarette, I stepped on it and crushed it. I still smoked, but I didn't finish it because I wanted to get back up to get my stuff done. But I still could go smoke. I just had to go smoke. And now it should be easy for any of us because there's no smoking allowed anywhere. Anyway, so then even in my truck, I would stop. If I wanted to have a cigarette, I'd get out of the truck. And that's how that went. And I wrote down every cigarette and what time it was. And there were times, y'all, one day I smoked 11 cigarettes and I said, ooh, I must have been upset. But I wrote every single one of them down, and there they were. And then, what was the thing? Oh, coffee in the morning. No, don't go down with your coffee and smoke. You have your coffee and then go 25 feet away from your house in the backyard and have your cigarette. But they can't go together because you got to figure out how to drink that coffee without smoking. Same after a meal, same after sex, same after drinking. I got through all of that. But the key word was, I'm becoming a non-smoker. I'm becoming a non-smoker. I never said I'm quitting, and if I want a cigarette, I can have a cigarette. I just have to go and have that cigarette. And after a while, it gets boring to stand there smoking by yourself. And then you start thinking about the stuff that you need to do. And pretty soon, the time between cigarettes got further and further apart. And it took 2 years. Well, it took 2 years and 2 months. I overshot my 50th birthday by 2 months, but it didn't matter. I was still, I got down to where I had like 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. And then I had like 1 cigarette a day, and it probably wasn't even a whole cigarette. And then I think I might have even gone a whole day without a cigarette. And then I smoked a cigarette, when I say I smoked a cigarette, I lit a cigarette up. And that was when, 2 years and 2 months, that last puff was sucking on that barbecue charcoal briquette. And in between, what else did I do? There was something that I did. Okay, never say quit. You are becoming a non-smoker. The other thing is, no buying cartons. Do not buy cartons. You buy 1 pack at a time. You smoked a cigarette, and if you can't finish it, you have to crush it to smithereens. And then go back and get your stuff done, okay? And if you feel like you want to have a cigarette, go have a cigarette. But you have to write it down. What number is it? What time is it? And go smoke it. It takes, 7 minutes to smoke a cigarette? And in this fast-paced world, oh my goodness, 7 minutes is a long time. And you start thinking about the stuff that you really want to get done. But your brain is not, giving you grief because you're not telling your brain that you're quitting. You're just becoming. You're becoming a non-smoker. There's people that have never smoked a cigarette in their whole life. Those are never smokers. Then there's people that have smoked or are smoking. Those are called smokers. And then there's people that are trying to quit and it's not working. They need to become non-smokers. Just like people that are alcoholics. They don't drink anymore, but they're still an alcoholic. And when I was totally finished smoking, I want to say about 6 months, I had a smoking dream. Oh my God, y'all. I woke up and I was like, I thought it was real. It felt real. In my dream, I was taking massive drags of that cigarette. And I woke up and I was like touching my chest and thinking my lungs were on fire. Nope, it was a smoking dream. But it was so, so real. So that's the other thing. You buy 1 pack at a time. If you don't finish the cigarette, you have to crush it to smithereens. Every cigarette you light has to be a brand new one. And you write down what number it is and what time. And that's it. And you just keep doing that. But you never say you're quitting. You say, I'm becoming a non-smoker. And don't deny yourself. If you want to have a cigarette, go have it. But get your stuff done first. Make it a treat. Make it a reward. Because when you're out there smoking by yourself, you start thinking about the stuff that you want to get done. So you take some puffs, but don't relight it. It has to be a brand new cigarette every time. I guarantee this works. This works so well. And then there's this other thing that tells you what happens to your body when you stop smoking. The other thing is that even though it took me 2 years and 2 months, I was 50 plus 2 months. That was 22 years ago. I'm going to be 72 in May. And I breathe, I run, I have plenty of energy. but it still worked. I mean, I thought I smoked 10 cigarettes a day and I only smoked 7. And then each, I mean, I started smoking less and less cigarettes because of the stuff I wanted to get done. And it took like 3-4 hours before I'd want a cigarette. And I'd like, okay, I'll go down and have one. But after 4 or 5 puffs and standing there for 3 or 4 minutes, they didn't taste all that good anymore. And it was boring. And that's when I ended up stepping on them. But still, the health process was working, even though I smoked. Then I count from that last puff in July 22 years ago of tasting like the charcoal briquette, never had another puff after that. So 1 hour later, in as little as 20 minutes after a person's last puff, the heart rate drops and begins to return to normal. After 12 hours, the body cleanses itself of the excess carbon monoxide from the cigarettes. Oh, and here's a little drink. You take 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar, which is the residue from wine barrels. And, it's wonderful in baking goods. But you take 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar and an 8-ounce glass of orange juice, and that flushes the toxins from your system. Ha! How about that? So then, after 1 day, after 24 whole hours, the 24 hours after your last puff, your blood pressure drops, decreasing the risk of heart disease from high blood pressure. After 2 days, you notice a heightened sense of smell and more vivid taste as these nerves heal. 3 days after stop smoking, your bronchial tubes begin to relax. You might notice that you feel easier to breathe and their energy levels increase. After 2 weeks, circulation begins to improve. Blood can pump through the heart and muscles more easily. A person's lung function also begins to improve. After 1 month, coughing and shortness of breath decrease. Hair-like structures called cilia, which moves mucus out of the lungs, regain typical function. After 3 to 9 months, a person's lung function increases by 10%. This improves any coughing, wheezing, or breathing problems. After 1 year, a person's risk of a heart attack and coronary disease becomes half of that of a person who smokes. After 5 years, a person's risk of certain cancers is reduced by half. These include mouth, throat, esophageal, and bladder. Oh, and there's that video, my cancer-killing, fat-melting drink, because lemon juice kills cancer cells, but not if you mix it with sugar. So that drink is there. So not smoking and having lemon juice that kills cancer, win-win. After 10 years, a person's risk of developing and dying from lung cancer is reduced to around half of a person who smokes. After 15 years, a person's risk of coronary heart disease becomes close to that of someone who does not smoke. Okay? And there was one more. After 20 years, where is it? Your health and your lungs and your blood pressure and your heart rate are those of somebody who never smoked. Just don't say the word quit. Don't give up. Write them down. Write what time it is. And just, don't ever say you're quitting. You can have a cigarette anytime you want. You just have to write down what time is it and what number cigarette is it for the day, and take yourself to your smoking spot far away from other people that don't smoke. I remember going to play bingo when I was a smoker, and I sat down next to this lady, and I said, "Do you mind if I smoke?" And she said, "I do." And I said, "Okay." And I stayed there. And she, after a few minutes, she goes, "Aren't you going to move?" And I said, "No, I can smoke later, but this is a good spot, and I've got a good view to hear the numbers and to see the numbers pop up." So even though I was a smoker, I I didn't need to smoke. I'd rather be in a good spot playing bingo and know I can smoke later. But there's some people, they got to have one after another. Those people don't want to not smoke. They like smoking. John Wayne smoked 2 packs a day, one after another. I can't even imagine that. I can't even imagine that. I mean, it's the worst addiction. Just like Carl Sandburg, a.k.a. Mark Twain, it's easier to kick heroin than cigarettes. That's awful. So don't say quit. Do not say quit. Just say, I'm becoming a non-smoker. Because I didn't start smoking out of the blue. I became a smoker after 2 years of trying to become a smoker. I mean, it was a disgusting process. I mean, snot, tears, puke, gagging, until you don't have tears and snot, puke, and gagging anymore. But you smell. You smell. Kissing somebody that smokes is like licking an ashtray. Unless they're a smoker too. And I know there's people that wake up and they light immediately. And that's fine when the first week. But you write that down. Okay? If you really want to become a non-smoker, you will do these things. You will not gain weight. You will not be irritable. You will not replace it with another addiction because you're not saying quit. I'm becoming a non-smoker. I became a non-smoker July 22 years ago. That was the last puff of a cigarette I ever took. And it was one puff. It was like deja vu. I'm 15 again and I'm taking my first drag of the hot embers from a charcoal briquette. And that's how that happened. And you can message me. You can anything. I'll be your coach if you need me. I mean, I know all kinds of stuff, all kinds of little tricks, but just don't say the word quit. I mean, the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society, we're here to help you quit smoking. Well, then stop saying that word, and that'll be the first step in the right direction, because your brain is addicted. Don't forget the ironic thought process. It works across the board. That's why the 10 Commandments were never honored, because thou shalt not kill. Well, we're overcrowded with murderers. Thou shalt not steal. Again, overcrowded with thieves. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Really? Divorce is 1 out of 2 couples get divorced and they marry somebody else because they were messing around with somebody else. Somebody else was married to somebody else, okay? None of the commandments have ever been honored. They've all been broken more than once, okay? So that's the process. Don't say the word quit. Don't buy cartons. When you finish your cigarette, crush it out. No putting it out and relighting it. That's not going to work. This works. This works, I guarantee it. And no weight gain, ladies or men. No irritability, no moodiness, and no denying yourself having a cigarette. You just have to make it someplace. You have to, make a smoking spot because you really want to become a non-smoker. But until you become a full-fledged non-smoker, you have to go through the same process as when you became a smoker. Okay? Just don't say quit. Put your cigarette out. If you can't finish it, crush it and light a brand new one later on. And then the drink, 8 ounces of orange juice with 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Beautiful. And it flushes the toxins out of your system. And vitamin C is very cool. Okay? Because you can't OD on vitamin C. They used to give 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C to those boys back at the Civil War. They'd give them a 10,000 milligram vitamin C enema to help them. Because vitamin C will go all through your body, hit all your organs, and if it's done its job and there's some left, it comes out in your urine. Okay, and that's always, look at how yellow my pee is. That's the vitamin C. Okay, so I hope this has helped. It worked for me. 22 years this July was the last puff of a cigarette. No weight gain, no weird second addiction, no irritability. And now when I smell cigarettes, I'm like, ugh! So it's all good in all the hoods. Thank you so much for watching. I will take all comments. I will answer anything when it comes to trying to get off of cigarettes. It's a horrible addiction. When it's compared to being easier to get off of heroin, that's horrible. That's horrible. I mean, you can kick heroin easier than you can kick cigarettes? That can't be right. So let's try this, peeps. Let's try this. Don't say you're quitting. Say you're becoming a non-smoker. And make sure people help you. If you have a smoker in your family, don't get them to try and stop smoking just because you are, but make them come out past the house. No more smoking in the house, no more smoking in the vehicle, no more smoking in the garage, okay? But you can still smoke. That's the key. You can have a cigarette. What time is it? What number is it? And where are you having it? And that's it. Until the stuff that you want to get done is way more important than having that cigarette, to where you get it done. And then all of a sudden, it's been like 3 or 4 hours, maybe 5 hours since you had a cigarette. So you're going to go have it. But they stop tasting really good. The longer you go between having a cigarette, the less they taste good, which is really cool. Just remember, the brain is addicted as well. So you got to be careful what words you say, because the brain will overpower you. What? We're quitting? What are we going to start next? Because we got to start something. No. My brain is already a messed up thing. I'm not going to add to it. I became a non-smoker. It took 2 years and 2 months. It might not take that long for any of you, especially if you have a different skill set than I do, you know? You might be more determined, you might be more focused, but this works. Again, this works. No weight gain, ladies, men, no irritability, no mood swings, and no new addiction. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for watching.